What inspired a chemical engineer to work in program management for trust and safety? Find out on today's episode.
I'm Angela Nakalembe from YouTube, and you're listening to Me, Myself, and AI.
Welcome to Me, Myself, and AI, a podcast from MIT Sloan Management Review, exploring the future of artificial intelligence. I'm Sam Ransbotham, professor of analytics at Boston College. I've been researching data, analytics, and AI at MIT SMR since 2014, with research articles, annual industry reports, case studies, and now 12 seasons of podcast episodes. On each episode, corporate leaders, cutting-edge researchers, and AI policymakers join us to break down what separates AI hype from AI success. Hey listeners, thanks for joining us again. Today we've got Angela Nakalembe, Engineering Program Manager at YouTube, with us in the virtual studio. Angela, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Excited to be here.
Typically we start with some background, but it's really hard to imagine any listener that doesn't know about YouTube. But still, can you give us a brief overview of YouTube and in particular what your role there is?
YouTube is an online video sharing platform started about 20 years ago. It's an online community for folks to share videos on any topic that they were interested in. It got acquired by Google Alphabet shortly after. And since then, it's just grown into this behemoth of an online presence with almost 2-3 billion users monthly, and created such an incredible online community for creators to connect and also just make a living as well. And what I do specifically at YouTube is I work behind the scenes within YouTube's trust and safety department, where as an engineering program manager, I'm responsible for overseeing a lot of the tools and feature launches, a lot of them now using AI, that help keep the platform safe from things like hate speech, misinformation, and graphing content and the like. So it's pretty rewarding work. And I feel like as we're in this ever-evolving world of AI, that we're seeing this technology get ever more integrated into our lives, it's really important that we find ways to not only use this technology to power our products and make it easier for us to send emails, but also to find ways to protect the people who are forming online communities.
You teed it up. What is happening with artificial intelligence in YouTube right now?
One of the ways we're using AI is to basically turbocharge our content moderation efforts and just make it a lot faster, but also a lot more humane. Imagine your job is to sit for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, reviewing videos filled with, like sexually explicit content or graphic violence or misinformation. That's the reality that exists for a lot of the human moderators that YouTube and other online social media platforms use to moderate content and keep that violative content off the platform. And doing that day in, day out can have such a huge emotional and psychological toll on our reviewers. But now with AI and machine learning, we're able to just really change that and evolve the role of the reviewer and have them work hand in hand, not just solo, but hand in hand with these AI tooling. And specifically, we're developing tools that can act as a first line of defense, right? That flag or catch harmful content before it ever reaches a person's eyes, whether on the platform or like a human reviewer. So while human reviewers are still needed as a step to kind of verify what these like AI models are doing, they no longer have to carry the weight and that burden alone, right? And I think to me, that's one of the most powerful uses of AI, is not particularly replacing people, but helping protect them in a sense, because now we are reporting much higher reviewer satisfaction scores in terms of well-being. We're also receiving a lot of positive feedback from our users or creators who notice a much faster handle time for a lot of issues or cases that they've reported. So things are getting taken down a lot faster, or things are just not actually making it onto the platform. So people feel it's a lot safer. So it's been incredible to see how we're able to use this technology to kind of just overall make it a much better experience for everyone across the board, both within YouTube and out in the world.
Yeah, that seems like a really interesting, we had a family friend who's a policeman, and he worked in parts of the police force that dealt with things you just didn't want to see. And, he talked about the turnover that job has. Even though they're doing and they believe in the job, it's a rough job. And it's the kind of thing that they end up taking home with them inadvertently, even if they don't want to. They can't just forget that which they've seen all day. Until you mentioned it here, it really kind of makes it sink in, this idea of you are, in some sense, replacing human workers. And that's a place where we really don't want humans to be doing something. Typically with artificial intelligence, we think about dirty, dull, and dangerous jobs.
Yeah, there's still an incredible need for these human moderators, right? There's a lot of nuance that AI just can't understand, especially when it comes to like racial sensitivity and issues, being able to have that extra. I think AI is fantastic because it gives that first line of defense and just tackles a lot of the more gory, very obvious instances of policy guideline violation. But then that leaves space for humans to handle, the work that needs a little bit more nuance, right? And so there's still need for human support in there.
Hey folks, Stephen Johnson here, co-founder of Notebook LM. As an author, I've always been obsessed with how software could help organize ideas and make connections. So we built Notebook LM as an AI-first tool for anyone trying to make sense of complex information. Upload your documents, and Notebook LM instantly becomes your personal expert, uncovering insights and helping you brainstorm. Try it at notebooklm.google.com.
Where you bank matters. MIT Federal Credit Union believes in putting people over profits, which is why members save more with higher savings rates and lower loan rates, all while giving back to their community. Learn more at mitfcu.org/community. MIT Federal Credit Union is federally insured by NCUA. And at the same time, we were talking about the time spent curating content, and you're not having a decreasing number of submissions. In fact, at the same time, we have artificial intelligence helping people produce content much more quickly. And so then you're getting much more content that you need to curate. But at the same time, I know you're having some struggles there with exactly what you do with AI content. Alphabet is working on developing these models, and at the same time, you've got an interesting position of curating them. What's the YouTube take on that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I do want to underscore that. Like, one of the benefits of AI has been frictionless content creation, right? It's helping people express themselves a lot easier across language barriers as well, and scaling ideas that they previously weren't able to, right? But the downside of that becomes when anyone can generate high quality text or video or image instantly, we're flooding the internet with a lot of content that looks legitimate, but really isn't. And that's a big thing that we've been struggling with, not just YouTube, but in general with the rise in AI. Like a good example could be, like last year was a really big election season globally, and we saw an uptick in huge AI-generated videos that people would create about political opponents saying, the most rage-baity information you can think of to get a rise out of people and spread all that misinformation. We've put a lot of time at YouTube on thinking about how we can prevent the spread of misinformation and just make sure people are more aware of the modality of creation of the content that they're consuming, right? A really good example I'd want to call out here is, like at Google and YouTube, what we're working on is this big initiative called C2PA, or Alliance. It's the Coalition for Content, Provenance, and Authenticity, or C2PA in short. Basically an open technical standard for publishers, creators, consumers to establish the origins of whatever content they're observing. It's a group of tech companies from across the world. Adobe and Microsoft, like a bunch of other companies, are involved as well and are committed to using this and requiring, at least at YouTube, we're requiring our creators to validate whether their content was created with a camera or with AI. That's one of the ways we're mitigating it. We're also training our models to flag any like misleading or low effort or manipulated content a lot faster. And the goal is really trying to restore context, or also what we call cognitive security, which is people's ability to be able to distinguish what's real or not in a world where it's becoming increasingly difficult to tell the difference. Because back to the example I shared earlier, last year, it was somewhat easy to tell the difference between what was AI generated versus not in terms of those like political videos and such. But fast forward 8 months later, Sam, there are some videos that I watch that I first glance, second glance could not tell that this was AI generated. It was very, very realistic, right? As the technology evolves, I think we as a company, Google, YouTube, we are trying our best to keep up with that and make sure that we can find ways to help people distinguish what's real versus what's not.
I'm glad you mentioned provenance, though, because I think in general, I mean, not just video, provenance is a big deal for any sorts of data that we're working with. And where data comes from, how it's used, what its source was, I think that's gotten much more difficult. I mean, it's wonderful that we have all this data and this video and content available, but at the same time, it has made it much harder to know where that came from. If I collected data myself, I knew where it came from. But if I use data from someone else, I'm one step removed. And I think, provenance in general is something for everyone to start paying attention more to. In some sense, there's such market power that YouTube has, a lot of the onus then comes to you. And what you do ends up becoming, to some degree, a de facto standard in the marketplace. And, not to put more pressure on you, but the things you're doing are pretty important there. I want to switch a little bit in here. Your title is engineering program manager, and you're actually an engineer. I always have to bring this out. I was a chemical engineer back in the day. You were a chemical engineer.
Yes.
I think for whatever reason, we have a preponderance of chemical engineers on this show. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up at YouTube.
My background, as you mentioned, we're both chemical engineering majors, and I had a passion for chemistry, always, a curious mind. And that's what drove me to it in the beginning. But I quickly realized, one, that there was not a lot of chemistry involved in chemical engineering. And then two, as a chemical engineer, or just as an engineer in general, you get to work on all these exciting projects and initiatives and problem solving, but you don't have quite a bit of autonomy in terms of the direction of where you want to take all of the work that you're doing. And I became increasingly hungry for the ability to be able to sway business strategy and decisions on where we took product. And so that's where I made the switch from engineering into management consulting, of all places. But it was a fantastic time because it allowed me to basically create my own, what I would call rotation program, right? Because I was able to work with front-facing with clients. There are Fortune 50 companies across a wide range of industries doing all these sort of digital transformations and helping them scale their technologies, maximize their impact globally. I ended up learning that I enjoyed working in the tech space because it was just always evolving in terms of industry, like consumer technology is just always evolving. I love working on tooling or products that people get to use in their everyday life and having a direct impact on that. The joy from being able to turn your TV on and tell somebody that, hey, part of the work I do every day, is to keep this app safe, or, I helped launch XYZ feature. It's very rewarding, right? And very nice when you can easily pinpoint that. That's how I landed on working in technology and working on work that I could have a direct impact on. And so I started looking for platforms or roles at companies that I got to use on an everyday basis. And YouTube was really high on my list because there's very few things that I watch or consume more than YouTube outside of books and the like. And so landed at YouTube, fell into trust and safety after kind of jumping around at different places and really just fell in love. I think I enjoyed the process of being able to build tools that keep the platform safe, not just for its users, but also just we really are the beating heart of trust and safety. It's really fulfilling work. And as AI becomes more of a presence in the work that we're doing, which honestly has happened 2.5, 3 years ago, it's been exciting to be at the forefront of that, having to think ahead of the curve to make sure the app still stays delivering the level of quality experience for our users that it has been, even as this technology comes in and becomes enmeshed in our everyday lives.
Hey everyone, our branded interview segment is with Dr. Ananya Mukherjee, Vice Chancellor at Shivnagar University. Dr. Mukherjee, thanks for taking some time to share a bit about your institute. Can you tell us a little bit about the school?
It's wonderful to be here. Shivnagar University was established in 2011 by Mr. Shivnagar, who is one of Asia's foremost philanthropists and a pioneer of the technological revolution in India. He established this university to give shape to his vision of establishing a multidisciplinary research university in India. At that time, when he established the university, undergraduate programs in India were primarily discipline-based and did not offer much scope for research or independent inquiry. So Shivnadar University became a trailblazer in a new kind of interdisciplinary, curiosity-based, residential, global education. We have 4 schools in engineering, humanities and the social sciences, natural sciences, and a school of management and entrepreneurship. And we also have an incubation center on campus. And the idea really is that students who study whatever discipline they choose to study, they get a very holistic education where they undergo a curriculum which is taken from all disciplines. And as I said, it's not very uncommon in some parts of the world, but at that time in India, it was quite a novelty. And we've seen very, very successful graduates make their mark in many parts of the world.
What's the role of artificial intelligence in the study programs?
We have emphasis on AI. Now it has taken on a larger dimension. But in terms of our research and our interest in anything related to these areas, we have been pursuing for a long time. Very recently, we've set up the AI Center for Excellence, which has 3 areas of focus. And our aspiration is to lead in this space.
We'll explore those 3 areas of focus on our next segment. And Anya, thanks for joining us today. Where should prospective students go to learn more about Shivnadar?
We would encourage people to visit our website, snu.edu.in/home. That is where you would find everything about us. Thank you very much for having me. I hope you feel interested to visit our website. And if you come to India, please visit us.
Actually, what I liked about that, as you're talking about the engineering, I saw some parallels. One of the plights of the engineer is that there's never the headline in the newspaper that, bridge doesn't fall for one more day. Right? It's only when the bridge falls that it's in the headline. And this is what engineers around the world are constantly frustrated about, by the fact that they do their job means that nobody knows about it. And just like as you were saying, if you're on YouTube and no one sees a content that's inappropriate, then they don't think about the fact that they didn't see that. So it's hidden there.
I've had to train myself to think of that as a sign that we're doing a good job, and be like, what, we're doing a good, if no one's talking about us, it means we're doing exactly what we need to do and we should pat ourselves on the back. So yeah, very proud of the work that we're doing and that we're going to continue doing. So yeah, I like that bridge analogy that you shared.
The opposite, though, is what's different about, let's say, the traditional engineering is that traditional engineering has, like civil engineering and chemical engineering, has established principles that are, the physics isn't changing on you every day. That the building materials, there are improvements, and I'm not denigrating the fact that there's improvements in those industries, but it feels very different than how rapidly, or you said over the last 2.5 years, how rapidly the tools have changed. So maybe some of the engineering analogy breaks down and you have to respond so quickly.
Yeah. 100%. I feel like there's never a dull moment, right? I think that's one of the reasons that I've enjoyed being in this space is you have to constantly be learning and constantly evolving and constantly looking at new ways to use the tooling or the skills that you have at your disposal, right? It used to be, hey, you just have a set of languages that you're really good at coding at, but now there's vibe coding coming into play. And now everyone's learning how to, build things in half the amount of time using these LLMs, right? Which has been a very exciting opportunity for us. I played around and built an app over the weekend with one of the Google DeepMind Labs tools. And it was really exciting. It's just like, these are things that I historically didn't think I'd be able to, build out, or at least it would take me a really long time to, but it's been really cool to see all the things that you can sort of like build out with this technology when you really focus on using it as a learning tool, as a tool for good, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about adaptability, right? Like my story itself, right? Started out in chemical engineering and now we're in trust and safety. It's as humans, we are very adaptable. I think that's one of our superpowers that we can harness. And as this technology becomes more prevalent in the workforce, I think we're better suited, like feeling the fear of the change that's coming with this tool, but then also guiding that fear towards like a curiosity and using that to learn more about this technology and how we can basically like bulletproof, whether it's our careers or just our lives, or, how we can use this technology for good.
You got some lofty ideas there, but I have to go back and push you.
Oh, yeah.
What was the app?
Sure.
Come on, listeners want to know. What was the app that you made over the weekend? We're not going to let that go so quickly.
I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next with my hair. It took me an embarrassingly long amount of time, but it was really fun. And I was able to generate a little app where I can just upload a photo and then like scroll through a bunch of different hairstyles, and figure out what it is I wanted to do, different hairstyles, hair colors. It's like a fun little exercise.
Okay, you responded well to me putting you on the spot. Thank you.
I might go off on a bit of a tangent here, but like, Sam, do you know what the biggest, as of 2025, what the number one use case for AI was?
Oh, if it's my class, it's doing homework.
Oh. You know what? I think it's close. Let me actually pull up the picture because someone sent this to me a couple of weeks ago and it was actually kind of mind-blowing. Homework is definitely up there. Yeah, in 2024, the number one use case was generating ideas. I think homework is probably somewhere around there. Generating ideas, therapy and companionship was number 2, and then specific research. But in 2025, the biggest use case for generative AI is therapy and companionship. And number 2 is organizing life. And then number 3 is finding purpose, which is so interesting. Like when you look at those top 3 things, and I mentioned earlier how our communities are becoming increasingly online. People are now also leaning onto generative AI as some form of your community, right? And that presents such an interesting dynamic. People using this tool for emotional support or for emotional connection is how do we remind people as they use this tool that AI is not sentient? It might appear to be, but it really isn't. It's very convincing, but we need to be very cognizant of the parasocial relationships that could be formed from using that and the cognitive vulnerabilities that could come as a result of becoming over-reliant on these tools, right? And at Google, YouTube are building guardrails to kind of help prevent this type of thing from happening, people becoming overly reliant on this technology or developing some sort of, how do I put it? Basically just like putting safeguards against role play that could simulate sentience. And just make sure that people are still very aware of the fact that when they're engaging with these tools, they're engaging with like a machine. And this is not a real person, because back to the concept of cognitive security, it's crucially important for us to, as we build with AI tooling, make sure that AI remains helpful and human-centered, but we do not want it to pretend to be human, And so how do we keep that at the forefront of all the work that we're doing?
And that's, to tie back to what you started this by saying is learning more about the technology and learning how it works and learning what is good for and not good for, very related to understanding that it is in fact a machine and not an actual person for a relationship. And what you speak to, I think, speaks of a potential growing divide between people who do learn more and get better at using these tools, and then people who then rely on the tools, maybe overly rely or use them in unhealthy ways. We've had a digital divide before, and now we have a even larger digital chasm, perhaps, between these people and the way that they are used. So actually, one of the things that we have is we have a segment where I ask you some rapid fire questions. We've already sort of touched on a lot of the interesting ones here, but
Okay.
What's moved faster or slower with artificial intelligence than you've expected?
It was the text to video or text to image and the accuracy of it. I think we all remember a few of the images that went viral like a year ago, where it was like the Pope in like a fancy winter coat and stuff like that, and how it was still very easy to distinguish that wasn't real. But fast forward to 2025, it's becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish between what's real and what's not. And to me, that's the thing that's kind of taking me aback.
What do you wish that AI could do better?
Ooh. Sometimes I feel like I have to put in a lot of effort in my prompt engineering. And I think it's really just a matter of time till we get there, right? That I won't need to be as detailed or like as specific with my prompts. And it will be a lot easier for it to retain a lot more context or just intuit based on whether it's like past conversations and such, what it is I'm trying to accomplish.
What about AI frustrates you the most?
Ooh, what frustrates me? I don't know if it's like artificial intelligence itself that frustrates me, but I think it's how it's being used. And maybe it's not frustrated, but it's more concerned. Like I did mention about the, people using artificial intelligence as almost like an emotional support person, building those very parasocial relationships. It does kind of scare me a little bit.
What's the best way you like to use AI? Was it making your app? What are other ways you personally like to use it?
The app was a fun way. Another way is I recently signed up for a triathlon and I had no idea what I was doing. I basically talked to my LLM and said, hey, I have X number of months to train for this sprint triathlon. Can you help me create a workout plan? I think life planning in general is a fantastic use for it. And so that's one of my favorite ways, just at least that I've currently been able to use AI for. It gave me a fantastic week by week breakdown that I can use based on my current goals and fitness level. And then from a work standpoint, maybe ramping up onto a new effort and really trying to understand what it is we're trying to do. Notebook LM has been such a fantastic tool. It's one of the Google tools out of Gemini where you can just drop a bunch of documents and such and have it synthesize a really fantastic summary for you. It can create a podcast for you based on any question you ask. And it's been a really good way to ingest information in a short amount of time and kind of just get up to speed on things really great. So yeah, I think those are my two favorite use cases.
That's great, actually. Too bad it won't do the exercise for you, but maybe it will save you enough time by summarizing things that you have the time to exercise.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We've enjoyed talking with you, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course. It was great. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Thanks for listening. On our next episode, I'll speak with Jitu Patel, President and Chief Product Officer at Cisco. Please join us.
Thanks for listening to Me, Myself, and AI. Our show is able to continue in large part due to listener support. Your streams and downloads make a big difference. If you have a moment, please consider leaving us an Apple Podcasts review or a rating on Spotify, and share our show with others you think might find it interesting and helpful.